Imagine a treasure so well hidden, it has baffled explorers for more than 2 centuries. A puzzle so complex, it has consumed fortunes and claimed lives. Off the coast of Nova Scotia, shrouded in mist and legend, lies Oak Island, home to one of the world's most enduring and perplexing mysteries. For generation after generation, treasure hunters, engineers, and dreamers have been drawn to this place, lured by the promise of unimaginable wealth and the thrill of the ultimate discovery. But what if the real story isn't just about what's buried deep below the ground? What if the most fascinating part of this enigma isn't the treasure itself, but the brilliant, shadowy minds who designed the trap in the first place? Picture an intricate system of flood tunnels, booby traps, and false clues, all engineered with astonishing precision. Whoever built the money pit didn't just want to hide something valuable, they wanted to make sure no one could ever reach it easily. This wasn't the work of amateurs, it was the masterpiece of architects, strategists, and visionaries operating with technology and knowledge far ahead of their time. Were they pirates protecting their plunder, Knights Templar safeguarding sacred relics, or perhaps something even more extraordinary, something history has yet to fully uncover? The genius behind the Oak Island money pit is a story of cunning, ambition, and obsession, a story that asks not just what is hidden, but why someone would go to such incredible lengths to keep it secret. In this video, we're going to journey beyond the shovels and the shafts, beyond the theories and the speculation. We're going to explore the minds behind the mystery, the creators. We'll walk in their footsteps, unravel their methods, and piece together the fragments of evidence that hint at their identities and motives. This is a tale of human ingenuity at its most daring and most mysterious, and by the end, you might just see Oak Island not as a hole in the ground, but as a mirror reflecting some of the boldest dreams and darkest secrets of those who came before us. The year was 1795, a time when the young nation to the south was still finding its feet. On a small, densely wooded island off the shores of Nova Scotia, a teenage boy named Daniel McGinnis was exploring, perhaps looking for timber or simply adventuring. What he stumbled upon that day would ignite a mystery that burns fiercely even now. In a small clearing, he saw something utterly out of place. A single, ancient oak tree, its branches gnarled with age. But it wasn't the tree itself that was so peculiar, it was what was attached to it. From one thick, overhanging limb, a weathered old ship's block and tackle hung suspended, swaying gently in the ocean breeze as if it had been used recently. It was a clear sign of human activity, a piece of machinery completely alien to that natural setting. His curiosity thoroughly sparked, Daniel's eyes then fell to the ground beneath this strange apparatus. There he found a noticeable circular depression in the soil, about 12 feet in diameter, as if the earth had settled over something buried long ago. The area around the depression was also marked. The ground had been cleared in a way that suggested deliberate effort, not natural decay. He rushed to fetch his 2 friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan, and together the 3 boys returned to the spot, their minds racing with possibilities. They were familiar with the local sailors' tales and legends of pirates of Captain Kidd and Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, who were said to have frequented these very waters. To their young, adventurous minds, that block and tackle could only mean one thing. Someone had used it to lower something very heavy into a hole right here. They believed with the unshakable certainty of youth that they were standing on top of a hidden pirate treasure. Armed with little more than shovels and determination, the boys began to dig. Just beneath the surface, they hit a layer of flagstones that were clearly not native to that part of the island. A few feet further down, their shovels struck wood, a platform of old oak logs securely set into the walls of the shaft. They pried the logs loose, eager to continue, only to find another identical platform just 10 feet below that one. This pattern continued, a maddening repetition of earth, then oak platforms at regular intervals of 10 feet. It was at the 30-foot mark that the true nature of their discovery began to dawn on them. This was no simple storage hole or pirate chest hastily buried. The engineering, the precision, the sheer depth of it all pointed to something far more sophisticated and intimidating. They realized they were in over their heads, both literally and figuratively. Their simple tools were no match for the scale of this project, and the growing darkness of the shaft seemed to hold more secrets than they could handle alone. They decided to abandon their dig for the time being, but they never abandoned the dream. They had uncovered the first layer of the puzzle, and in doing so, they had planted a seed of obsession that would grow for centuries, capturing the imagination of countless others who would follow in their footsteps, forever chasing the shadow they first saw dangling from an old oak tree. Of course, those initial discoveries by the boys were just the very beginning. They had uncovered the what, a deep, engineered shaft, but for decades the who and why remained a complete enigma. Naturally, the first and most romantic suspects were the swashbuckling figures of legend, pirates. The waters around Nova Scotia were a well-documented highway for some of history's most notorious buccaneers. Two names in particular captured the public's imagination and became forever linked to the Oak Island mystery: Captain William Kidd and Edward Teach, the infamous Blackbeard. Captain Kidd's story is particularly compelling because it blends historical fact with tantalizing myth. He wasn't always an outlaw. He started as a privateer, legally commissioned by the English crown to hunt French ships and other pirates. But somewhere along the line, he crossed a blurry line into outright piracy. His most famous capture was the immense and treasure-laden Armenian ship, the Quedagh Merchant. Historical records show that after his arrest in Boston, only a fraction of his supposed wealth was ever recovered. Kidd himself, just before his execution in 1701, allegedly offered up a cryptic promise that he had hidden a treasure so vast that not even his captors could imagine its value, a treasure he would take to his grave. For generations, this dying declaration was seen as a direct clue, pointing toward a hidden cache like the one on Oak Island. The logic was simple. A pirate of his repute would need an incredibly secure location to hide such a massive haul, and the intricate, booby-trapped money pit certainly fits that description. Then there's the legend of Blackbeard, a figure who truly embodied the terror and spectacle of the golden age of piracy. It was said that he once boasted he buried his treasure, where none but Satan and myself can find it. Could Oak Island have been that place? Blackbeard operated extensively along the American eastern seaboard and was known to have used hidden coves and inlets for repairs and resupply. Mahone Bay, with its collection of islands, would have provided perfect cover. The sheer scale of the engineering on Oak Island also seems to match the scale of Blackbeard's operation. He commanded a small fleet and hundreds of men, a workforce certainly capable of such an ambitious project. But as compelling as these pirate tales are, they begin to unravel under closer scrutiny. While both Kidd and Teach were brilliant seamen and fearsome leaders, there is no historical evidence that either had any background in advanced engineering or hydraulics. The money pit isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a masterpiece of misdirection and mechanical ingenuity, featuring a complex network of flood tunnels that ingeniously link the shaft to the ocean. This system, designed to flood the pit the moment treasure seekers get close, suggests a deep understanding of physics and construction that goes far beyond the skill set of a typical pirate crew. Furthermore, the documented activities of these men don't really align with a project of this magnitude. Pirate treasure was typically divided frequently among the crew or spent quickly in port. The idea of a massive, unified treasure hoard is often more myth than reality. And perhaps most damning to the theory is the timeline. Most historians agree that the golden age of piracy had largely ended by the 1730s, Yet carbon dating of the original oak platforms in the Money Pit suggests they were felled around the mid-1700s. This creates a significant chronological gap, placing the pit's construction in an era when these famous pirates were long gone. So while the pirate theory provides a thrilling and romantic origin story, it ultimately raises more questions than it answers, pushing us to look for creators with not just wealth, but with a specific kind of knowledge and a motive that extended far beyond mere profit. And so we find ourselves moving from the high seas of piracy to the hallowed halls of a different kind of power altogether. If the pirate theory feels too simplistic for such an elaborate construction, then the next suspect on our list possesses not only the means but also a motive of truly world-altering proportions: the legendary Knights Templar. This isn't just a theory about hidden gold, it's a theory about hidden history, one that suggests the Oak Island mystery is the final chapter in the story of one of the most powerful and persecuted organizations the world has ever known. To understand this connection, we have to journey back to the 14th century. The Knights Templar were a monastic military order founded to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. Through shrewd management and papal favor, they grew into the world's first multinational banking corporation, amassing staggering wealth and influence. But this very power became their downfall. In 1307, King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order, orchestrated a brutal crackdown. On Friday, October 13th, the origin of our superstition about Friday the 13th, hundreds of Templars were arrested, tortured, and executed. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake. According to legend, as the flames consumed him, he cursed the king and the pope, declaring they would both meet him before God within a year. Remarkably, both men were dead within that time, sealing the Templar legend in an aura of mystery and vengeance. But here's the crucial part of the legend. Official history says the order was destroyed and its assets seized. Yet many believe a fleet of Templar ships, loaded with their vast treasury and most sacred relics, escaped from the French port of La Rochelle just before the arrests began. This fleet simply vanished from all historical records. The theory proposes that these fugitive knights, carrying unimaginable treasures, perhaps even the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, sailed across the Atlantic, seeking a new world far from the reach of the Church and European kings. They needed a permanent, incredibly secure hiding place for their most precious cargo, a vault that would protect it for centuries, and that, according to this theory, is what the Money Pit truly is, not a pirate's loot hole but the Templars' final reliquary. The evidence cited for this is both intriguing and circumstantial. Proponents point to the mysterious 90-foot stone, a coded slab allegedly discovered in the early 1800s, which some cryptographers claim translated to a message about treasure buried 40 feet below. More compelling are the numerous man-made stone markers found across the island, including a peculiar triangular swamp and a controversial stone cross, which some researchers argue align with known Templar surveying and symbolic practices. Perhaps the most tangible link is the presence of a specific type of coconut fiber called esparto grass found deep within the flood tunnels. This material is not native to Canada. Its origin points to the Mediterranean region, exactly where the Templars operated. But the most speculative and thrilling part of this theory involves the possibility of pre-Columbian transatlantic travel. If the Templars did indeed reach Nova Scotia in the early 1300s, it would rewrite history books, placing them in North America nearly 200 years before Columbus. While mainstream historians remain skeptical, the idea is not without some precedent. Artifacts like the Westford Knight, a potential carving in Massachusetts, and the Newport Tower in Rhode Island, a structure with alleged Templar architectural cues, are often presented as evidence of their presence. The sheer scale and ingenuity of the Oak Island workings do seem to demand an organization with immense resources, architectural knowledge, and a profound, almost sacred, reason for creating something so permanent and so well defended. The pirate wanted to retrieve his loot. The Templar, it seems, might have wanted to ensure it was never found, protecting a secret so powerful it had to be buried, both literally and figuratively, forever. Yet if the creators were not pirates or knights, perhaps they were not warriors at all, but intellectuals, philosophers, and scientists operating under a veil of secrecy. This leads us to one of the most fascinating and cerebral theories of all, that the brilliant mind behind the Oak Island enigma was none other than Sir Francis Bacon, the famed Elizabethan philosopher, scientist, and statesman. This theory ventures far beyond mere treasure, proposing that the money pit is not a vault for gold, but a library for ideas, a time capsule designed to preserve world-altering knowledge from destruction. To understand this idea, we must first step into the turbulent world of 16th and 17th century Europe, a time of immense intellectual ferment but also of great danger. Sir Francis Bacon was a visionary far ahead of his time, often called the father of the scientific method. He championed empirical inquiry and the pursuit of knowledge, but he was also a man deeply immersed in the world of secrets. He was a member of the Rosicrucians, a secret society dedicated to the acquisition of ancient wisdom and enlightenment. More importantly, he was a master cryptographer, developing the bilateral cipher, a sophisticated method of hiding messages within seemingly innocent text. For Bacon, information was the ultimate currency, and its protection was paramount. This brings us to the most controversial part of his legend, the Shakespeare authorship question. For centuries, some scholars have argued that the plays attributed to William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon contain a depth of legal, political, and philosophical knowledge that a common actor simply would not have possessed. They point to Francis Bacon as the true genius behind the works, suggesting he used the pseudonym to avoid the scrutiny and potential persecution that came with publishing such provocative ideas for the stage. If this is true, then Bacon wasn't just hiding his identity, he was hiding the revolutionary knowledge contained within the plays themselves. Now, consider the next logical step in this theory of concealed wisdom. If Bacon and his circle of enlightened thinkers, a group some call the Invisible College, possessed knowledge they believed was crucial for humanity's future but too dangerous for their own time, they would need a way to preserve it. They would require a vault that could survive fires, wars, and the slow decay of centuries. A vault that was not just hidden, but actively protected by ingenious, flooding booby traps to ensure it would only be discovered by a future society advanced enough to understand its contents and bypass its defenses. This, proponents argue, is the true purpose of the Oak Island money pit. The treasure isn't gold, it is the original manuscripts of Shakespeare's plays, Bacon's own scientific and philosophical writings, and perhaps even evidence of his authorship, all sealed away for safekeeping. The evidence linking Bacon to Oak Island is, like the other theories, cryptic but compelling. It revolves largely around the mysterious symbols and codes found on the island. The 90-foot stone with its strange cipher is often presented as the kind of puzzle Bacon, the cryptographer, would have delighted in creating. Furthermore, the complex engineering of the flood tunnels demonstrates a precise understanding of hydraulics and mechanics that aligns perfectly with the scientific curiosity of Bacon's intellectual circles. It suggests a mind that valued applied knowledge, that could conceive of a machine meant to operate untouched for hundreds of years. This theory transforms the entire narrative of Oak Island. It is no longer a story about greed, but about guardianship. The pit becomes a promise, a message in a bottle meant for the future. The flood tunnels are not a malicious trick, but a filtering mechanism, ensuring that only the persistent and the clever, those worthy of the knowledge within, would ever succeed in reaching it. While the pirate sought to hide wealth for himself, and the Templar sought to hide relics from their enemies, Bacon, in this telling, sought to hide truth for all of us, a final, grand experiment in the preservation of human genius against the relentless tide of ignorance and time. But if the creators were not European intellectuals or knights, perhaps the real architects came from an empire of a different kind, one built on New World gold and military might. This brings us to a theory that is both historically grounded and tantalizingly plausible, the Spanish treasure fleet hypothesis. To explore this idea, we must shift our gaze from the philosophical salons of England to the sun-drenched and bloody conquests of the Spanish Empire in the Americas. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, Spain was the wealthiest power on earth, its coffers overflowing with gold and silver plundered from the Aztec and Inca empires. This unimaginable wealth was shipped back to Europe in massive, annual convoys known as the Spanish treasure fleets. These were not mere collections of ships, they were floating fortresses carrying the lifeblood of the Spanish crown. But the journey from the Caribbean to Spain was incredibly perilous. Ships faced hurricanes, treacherous reefs, and of course, the constant threat of pirates and privateers eager to seize a king's ransom. The coast of Nova Scotia, with its fog-shrouded islands and rocky outcrops, was a notorious graveyard for ships of all nations. Historical records confirm that several Spanish vessels did indeed meet their end in these northern waters. Could one of these ships, heavily laden with treasure, have been driven off course and wrecked near Oak Island? And if so, would the survivors have attempted to salvage their sacred cargo? This is where the theory gains its fascinating traction. The Spanish were not just conquerors, they were also brilliant engineers and relentless builders. Across their empire, they constructed formidable fortifications, intricate aqueducts, and deep mines. Their military engineers would have possessed exactly the kind of knowledge required to build something as complex as the Money Pit. Imagine a scenario: a damaged Spanish galleon, its hull leaking and mast shattered, limps into Mahone Bay seeking shelter for repairs. The crew knows they cannot continue their voyage, but they are determined to protect the crown's treasure from falling into enemy hands. Using their considerable engineering skills and forced labor, perhaps from enslaved peoples or captured sailors, they undertake a monumental project. They dig a deep shaft, constructing it with timber platforms to prevent collapse, and then they devise the pièce de résistance, the flood tunnel system. This wouldn't be a mere booby trap, it would be a permanent security measure. By ingeniously channeling seawater from the bay into the pit, they could ensure that even if the treasure's location was discovered, it could never be retrieved by anyone who didn't understand the system's design. The treasure is secured, the ship is repaired or scuttled, and the survivors sail away carrying the secret of the pit's location to their graves. A secret that, for whatever reason, was never passed on or retrieved by the Spanish crown. The physical evidence on Oak Island offers some compelling, though debated, clues that point toward Spanish activity. The discovery of a small, copper Spanish coin dated to the 17th century provides a tangible link, a solitary relic that hints at a Spanish presence on the island. Furthermore, the mysterious artificial beach, a man-made construct designed to feed the flood tunnel system, demonstrates a level of large-scale earth-moving and hydrological understanding that aligns perfectly with known Spanish engineering capabilities from that era. They were masters of moving water and earth, from the silver mines of Potosi to the fortifications of Havana. However, a significant historical complication arises. The Spanish Empire was a vast and meticulous bureaucracy. They kept incredibly detailed records of their shipments, their losses, and their recovery efforts. If a treasure galleon carrying a vast fortune had been lost and its crew had successfully salvaged the cargo to bury it, it stands to reason that there would be some record, some mention of a subsequent expedition sent to recover it. Yet, no such documentation has ever been found in the extensive Spanish archives. This silence is a powerful argument against the theory. Would the Spanish crown, perpetually hungry for gold to fund its endless wars, simply abandon such a fortune if they knew its general location? It seems unlikely. This absence in the historical record suggests that if the Spanish were involved, it may have been an unauthorized, rogue operation, a captain acting on his own initiative to hide treasure, perhaps with the intention of returning later for personal gain, a secret he took to a watery grave. This leaves us with a theory that is rich with possibility and supported by intriguing artifacts, yet ultimately shadowed by the same silence that envelops the entire island. A mystery guarded as much by missing documents as it is by flooding tunnels. Yet the possibility remains that the creators were not outsiders at all, but rather an established official power operating with the full authority of the crown. This leads us to one of the most pragmatic and historically grounded theories, that the brilliant minds behind the money pit were British military engineers, and the entire complex was not a treasure vault, but a supremely secure storage facility built during the turbulent colonial era. To evaluate this idea, we must step away from the shadows of pirates and knights and into the well-documented world of 18th century warfare and imperial ambition. The mid-1800s were a time of intense global conflict between Britain and France, known in North America as the French and Indian War. Nova Scotia, or Acadia as it was known, was a hotly contested territory, a strategic prize that changed hands multiple times. The British military presence in the region was significant and sophisticated. The Royal Engineers of this period were among the finest in the world, renowned for their expertise in fortification, siegecraft, and perhaps most relevantly, military mining. These were the men who built the formidable fortresses of Louisbourg and Halifax, capable of complex excavations and hydraulic systems. The artificial beach and flood tunnel network on Oak Island would not have been a mysterious feat for them, it was standard procedure. They regularly used controlled flooding as a defensive measure in their mines and countermines to thwart enemy sappers. The precision and effectiveness of the Oak Island system perfectly align with their known military tactics and technical manuals. So what might the British Army have needed to hide with such extreme security? The most straightforward answer is payroll. Transporting large sums of gold and silver coin to pay soldiers in a hostile theater was an enormous risk. A ship could be lost to a storm or captured by the enemy. Burying a military chest in a secret, booby-trapped location on a remote, unassuming island would be an incredibly logical solution. The flood tunnels ensure that even if the location was discovered by French forces or spies, they could not extract the funds. Only the British engineers who built it, with knowledge of how to disarm their own system, could safely retrieve the king's gold. Alternatively, the pit could have been designed to protect something even more valuable than money: sensitive documents. In an age of espionage, plans for campaigns, coded ciphers, lists of agents, or treaties with local indigenous tribes would be worth far more than their weight in gold. Securing them in a waterproof, fireproof, and enemy-proof vault would be a paramount intelligence objective. The theory is compelling because it replaces mystery with motive and legend with logistics. It provides a clear who with a proven capability and a clear why rooted in the practical realities of war. However, a significant obstacle stands in its way: the complete absence of any official record. The British military was famously meticulous in its record-keeping. Expenses for such a substantial engineering project would have required authorization, materials would have been requisitioned, and payroll ledgers would have noted a missing fortune. If the pit was an official royal project, its construction and, crucially, the eventual retrieval of its contents should be documented. The fact that no such records have ever been found suggests that if the British were involved, it may have been a clandestine, off-the-books operation conducted by a rogue commander without higher approval. Perhaps the men who built it were killed in battle before they could reveal the location, or the officer in charge died with the secret, leaving the empire's wealth or secrets to sink slowly into the mud of Mahone Bay, forever lost to the very government that commissioned it. As we sift through these theories of pirates, knights, and emperors, another group emerges from the shadows, one whose very identity is built upon symbolism, secrecy, and a mastery of architecture, the Freemasons. This is not merely another guess in the long list of suspects. The connection between Freemasonry and the Oak Island mystery is woven through the island's very soil, etched into its stones, and reflected in the philosophical underpinnings of the money pit itself. To consider the Masons as the creators is to consider the possibility that the pit is not just a trap but a testament, a physical manifestation of their most guarded principles. The evidence often begins with the island's many enigmatic markings. Over the centuries, explorers have uncovered a variety of strange, man-made symbols carved into rocks and stones. These include triangles, arrows, and peculiar drilled holes, all of which proponents argue are not random scratches but deliberate Masonic codes. In Freemasonry, geometry is a sacred language. The square and compasses are its most famous emblem, representing morality and virtue, but other shapes carry deep meaning. A triangle can symbolize the delta, a reminder of the divine presence, while specific angles and alignments can denote everything from a lodge's location to a degree of initiation. The theory suggests that these markers on Oak Island are not a map to treasure in the conventional sense, but a symbolic guide, a ritualistic pathway meant to be read and understood only by those who possess the esoteric knowledge of the craft. They are the signature of the architects, left behind not for the common treasure hunter, but for a fellow brother who would one day recognize their work. This leads to the second, and perhaps more compelling, pillar of the Masonic theory, capability. By the mid-1800s, the time period that best fits the carbon dating of the original wood in the pit, Freemasonry was a powerful and widespread fraternal organization. Its membership included many of the era's most brilliant minds, architects, stonemasons, engineers, and military leaders. These were men who possessed the precise technical knowledge required to execute a project of the money pit's staggering complexity. The design mirrors Masonic values in a profound way. The precise, orderly platforms set at regular intervals reflect a belief in structure and proportion. The ingenious defensive flood tunnel system is a physical embodiment of the concept of protection and secrecy, safeguarding a sacred truth from the uninitiated. The entire undertaking feels less like a frantic effort to hide loot and more like a deliberate, ritualistic act of creation, the building of a permanent, hidden temple. But what would the Masons have been protecting with such fervor? This is where the theory diverges from simple treasure. Some researchers propose the vault contains artifacts of immense spiritual or historical importance to the fraternity. This could include original founding documents, sacred texts, or even relics tracing the order's legendary lineage back to the Templars, creating a direct link to the earlier theory. The Masons, as guardians of this secret history, would have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure its survival through the ages. The money pit, in this light, becomes a type of time capsule or ark, designed to preserve these truths through any catastrophe, be it war, fire, or the slow erosion of time. Its booby traps are not meant to harm but to test. They ensure that only those with the perseverance, intelligence, and perhaps the moral character worthy of the knowledge within could ever hope to reach it. This transforms the narrative from a hunt for gold into a quest for enlightenment, a philosophical puzzle that just happens to be buried 100 feet underground. The real treasure of Oak Island, according to this belief, is not a chest of coins but a key to understanding the hidden currents of history itself. Yet as we explore these grand theories of European architects, from Templars to engineers, we must also cast our gaze to a group whose connection to this land is far more ancient and foundational, the indigenous peoples of North America. This perspective shifts the narrative entirely, asking not who came to this island to hide something, but who might have already been there, shaping it for reasons of their own long before the first European treasure hunters arrived. Could the roots of the Oak Island mystery lie not in a buried chest but in a sacred site? the Micmac people have inhabited the region of modern-day Nova Scotia, which they call Micmaci, for thousands of years. Their deep spiritual and practical knowledge of the land is undeniable. The theory of a Native American origin for the Oak Island workings proposes that the so-called money pit and its associated structures were not built to conceal treasure, but to serve a ceremonial or practical purpose within their culture. One compelling suggestion is that the intricate system of tunnels and chambers could have been part of a sophisticated fish weir or trapping system designed to harness the powerful tides of Mahone Bay. Alternatively, the site may have held spiritual significance, a sacred place for rituals or a burial ground, which would explain the effort taken to protect it from disturbance with a natural defense like the flooding mechanism. The artificial beach, in this view, isn't a malicious booby trap but a cleverly engineered feature to control water flow for practical reasons. Its true purpose misunderstood by European interlopers who saw everything through the lens of gold and piracy. The archaeological evidence for pre-European settlement in the region is robust, though its direct link to the Oak Island structures remains hotly debated. Artifacts found on the island, including primitive stone tools and evidence of ancient campfires, confirm a Native American presence. However, the leap from a seasonal camping ground to the creator of a project as complex as the money pit is a significant one. Critics of this theory point to a lack of any parallel construction in the known archaeological record of the Micmac or any other eastern woodland culture. There is no evidence that these societies engaged in deep shaft mining or built large-scale hydraulic works. Their engineering brilliance was expressed in other ways, in the construction of longhouses, the crafting of complex watercraft, and the development of extensive trade networks. The precise, squared timber platforms found deep within the pit are unlike any known indigenous construction technique from the area. This leaves us with a theory that is profoundly important in acknowledging the long history of the island's first inhabitants, yet perhaps insufficient to fully explain the anomaly that is the money pit. It seems unlikely that the Micmac, with their intimate knowledge of the area, would choose such an labor-intensive method for a fish trap when simpler, more effective methods were available. Furthermore, the use of ships' pulley blocks and coconut fiber, materials utterly foreign to pre-contact North America, strongly points to later European-influenced construction. While the Native American theory rightly challenges the Eurocentric focus of most treasure narratives and adds a crucial layer of historical context, it ultimately struggles to account for the full scope of the evidence. The money pit appears to be a hybrid monster, a structure that may have incorporated a natural landscape known to the Micmac, but which was ultimately transformed by a different, much later group with vastly different technology, motives, and secrets to bury. But if the British don't quite fit the bill, perhaps we need to consider their greatest adversaries in the struggle for North America. Our search for the creators now takes us to a formidable fortress of stone and a group of engineers whose desperation and ingenuity knew no bounds. This is the French Connection, a theory that posits the money pit was the brainchild of military engineers from the French stronghold of Louisbourg, a last-ditch effort to protect a kingdom's wealth from falling into enemy hands. To understand this possibility, we must travel to the eastern tip of Cape Breton Island in the 1740s. Here stood Louisbourg, a massive fortified town and France's most significant military and economic asset in the region. It was a bustling hub of commerce and a vital guardian of the entrance to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The French military engineers stationed there, the Ingénieurs du Roi, were among the finest in the world. Their expertise is still visible today in the meticulously reconstructed fortress, a testament to their mastery of complex geometry, masonry, and perhaps most importantly, advanced hydraulics. These were men who designed intricate moats, cisterns, and drainage systems for the fortress itself. The concept of using seawater as a defensive mechanism would have been second nature to them. The artificial beach and flood tunnel system on Oak Island, which seems so miraculous to us, would have been a logical, if ambitious, application of their standard military engineering principles. Their motivation would have been born from the looming shadow of war. The conflict between France and Britain for control of North America was intensifying, and the vulnerability of Louisbourg was well known. It was first captured by British colonial forces in 1745. Though returned to France by treaty in 1748, the threat of a renewed, larger British assault was constant. The officials in Louisbourg would have been acutely aware that their immense treasury payroll for soldiers, funds for supplies, and perhaps even tax revenues collected from the region was a prime target. If a British fleet appeared on the horizon, the fortress could be besieged and captured, its wealth seized. They needed a plan B, a secret, off-site vault where they could safeguard their fortune until they could either prevail or be reinforced. Oak Island, located a relatively short sail away in Mahon Bay, a name derived from the French mahon, meaning a type of barge, was the perfect location. It was remote, unassuming, and easily defensible by a small contingent of men. Imagine the scenario: under the cover of darkness or the guise of a routine logging operation, a contingent of French engineers and their workforce sailed to the island. Utilizing their formidable skills, they orchestrate the construction of the money pit with breathtaking speed and efficiency. The timber platforms prevent collapse in the unstable soil, a technique they would have used in their siege mines. The flood tunnels are their masterpiece, a permanent guarantee that even if the British discovered the shaft, they would never recover the contents. The treasure is secured, the evidence concealed, and the men returned to Louisbourg. History tells us the fortress fell again to a massive British force in 1758. This time it was for good. The defeat was so total and the subsequent British occupation so complete that any officers or engineers who knew the secret of Oak Island may have been killed, captured, or dispersed, their secret dying with them. The French crown, reeling from the loss of its entire North American empire, would have had no resources or knowledge to ever mount a recovery mission. The fortune, if it exists, was simply forgotten, left to fuel legends for centuries. This theory provides a compelling blend of clear motive, proven technical capability, and a tragic historical backdrop that perfectly explains why such a project would have been undertaken and then ultimately lost to time. The true genius of the Oak Island money pit isn't found in a treasure chest, but in the dirt and stone itself. To construct this system, the creators needed more than just manpower. They required a sophisticated understanding of three critical scientific disciplines: hydrology, geology, and advanced construction. Let's break down exactly what they built, because the engineering is perhaps the most compelling evidence we have for identifying who was behind it all. First, consider the hydrological mastery on display. The infamous flood tunnels are a feat of precise hydraulic engineering. These weren't just random channels that accidentally filled with water. They were deliberately designed arteries that connected the main shaft directly to the ocean. The builders had to possess an intimate knowledge of tidal patterns. They understood that the water level in the bay fluctuates, and they engineered the tunnels to exploit this natural pump. The system was designed so that as treasure hunters dug deeper, the increasing pressure would eventually overcome the natural barriers, triggering a catastrophic flood that would fill the pit with seawater. Even more impressively, the artificial beach on Smith's Cove is now widely believed to have been the water source. This wasn't a natural formation, it was a massive, man-made filtration system. Layers of eelgrass, coconut fiber, and sand were meticulously arranged to act as a sieve, allowing water to seep through while preventing sediment from clogging the intricate network of drains that fed the tunnels. This demonstrates a conceptual understanding of water pressure, flow dynamics, and filtration that was incredibly advanced for its time. Next, we have to look at their geological expertise. The creators didn't just start digging randomly. They chose a specific location on the island, one that their knowledge told them could support such a deep excavation. They understood the composition of the soil and the underlying bedrock. The very design of the pit, with its wooden platforms set at precise 10-foot intervals, shows a profound understanding of soil mechanics and the need to shore up the walls to prevent a catastrophic collapse long before the treasure was ever reached. This isn't intuitive knowledge, it's the kind of technical understanding gained from experience in deep mining, quarrying, or large-scale military siege works. Furthermore, the use of specific, non-native materials like the coconut fiber and the carefully shaped flagstones at the surface indicates they weren't just using what was locally available. They imported materials suited to the specific geological and hydrological challenges they were engineering against. Finally, the construction techniques themselves point to a highly organized and skilled workforce. This was a massive undertaking. The main shaft is believed to be over 100 feet deep. The tunnels running to the ocean are estimated to be several hundred feet long. Excavating this by hand with simple tools would have required a significant labor force operating with military-like discipline and coordination. The precision of the work is astonishing. The wooden platforms were not haphazard. They were expertly notched and fitted, a technique that would be familiar to skilled shipwrights or experienced loggers. The stone markings found across the island are not random scratches. Many feature precise angles and drilled holes that suggest surveying and alignment, the kind of work done by trained masons or military engineers. This was not a project that could be completed in a few weeks by a handful of pirates. It would have taken a large team months, perhaps even years, of grueling work, all directed by a brilliant mastermind with a comprehensive plan. So, what does this analysis tell us about the creators? It eliminates the possibility of a rushed, panicked burial. This was a deliberate, meticulously planned project executed by individuals or an organization with access to specialized knowledge, skilled labor, and significant resources. They weren't just diggers, they were architects, hydrologists, and geologists operating with a level of technical prowess that would be impressive even by today's standards. This narrows our list of suspects considerably, pointing us away from opportunistic pirates and toward entities that employed or consisted of the leading engineers and military strategists of their era. This brings us to one of the most tantalizing and debated pieces of the entire puzzle: the language of the creators themselves, etched in stone and whispered through symbols. If the engineering of the money pit is the body of this mystery, then the cryptographic evidence is its soul, a series of deliberate clues left behind, perhaps as a map, a warning, or a final testament from those who built it. These aren't random scratches, they are a potential Rosetta Stone, a direct line of communication from the 18th century, and deciphering their meaning could be the key to unlocking everything. The most famous of these artifacts is without a doubt the legendary 90-foot stone. The story goes that in the early 1800s, as the Unsolved company dug down to the 90-foot level, their workers uncovered a large, flat stone slab unlike any other in the pit. It was not a natural part of the geology, it had been placed there. Most intriguingly, its surface was inscribed with a series of strange, cryptic symbols. While the original stone was allegedly used later in a fireplace and lost to history, a transcription of the symbols was supposedly made, passed down through the years. According to popular legend, a schoolteacher later deciphered the code, revealing a message that has fueled the treasure hunt ever since. 40 feet below, £2 million are buried. The sheer specificity of this message is what makes it so electrifying and so suspicious. It feels almost too perfect, a classic treasure trove note. Yet, if genuine, it would be the single greatest piece of evidence that the pit was indeed a man-made vault for something of immense value. The very act of leaving a coded message suggests the builders anticipated that someone might eventually find their work, but they wanted to ensure that only someone with the intellect to break their cipher could claim the prize. But the 90-foot stone is just the beginning. Across Oak Island, explorers have discovered a bizarre gallery of other markings. There are rocks with precisely drilled holes arranged in strange patterns or triangles. There are stones carved with arrows, circles, and even what some researchers believe could be ancient, esoteric symbols. To the untrained eye, they might look like natural weathering or the idle scratches of later settlers. But to those who believe in the pit's deliberate design, these are waypoints. They form a potential trail, a symbolic map that leads from the shoreline to the money pit itself, or perhaps to other, yet-to-be-discovered sites on the island. The triangular swamp, for instance, is often cited as a massive, unnatural formation that some argue aligns with certain celestial bodies or Masonic principles, turning the entire landscape into a giant geoglyph, a message written not on paper but on the earth itself. So, who would communicate in such a way? The use of complex ciphers and symbolic codes immediately points us toward groups for whom secrecy was a way of life. This is where the theory of Francis Bacon gains tremendous traction. Bacon was not just a philosopher, he was a pioneer in the field of cryptography, developing what is known as the bilateral cipher, a method of hiding secret messages within seemingly innocent text by using variations in font. A mind like his would have delighted in creating an elaborate, multi-layered puzzle, ensuring that the treasure, whether it was gold or knowledge, could only be found by those worthy of it through intellectual merit. The symbols on Oak Island could be a physical manifestation of his cipher, a puzzle box waiting for the right solver. Similarly, the Freemasons were prolific users of symbols. Their entire fraternal structure is built upon a foundation of allegory and symbolism, where everyday tools like the square, compass, and level represent moral and philosophical concepts. The precise angles, drilled holes, and geometric patterns found on the island mirror the kinds of markers Masons might use to denote a sacred site or to convey hidden information to fellow initiates. The markings may not spell out treasure here in plain language. Instead, they might indicate a specific Masonic degree involved in the construction, point toward a celestial alignment significant to their beliefs, or serve as a spiritual ward to protect the site. Even the Knights Templar, often associated with complex codes and secret maps to their supposed treasures, fit this cryptographic profile. The idea of a cipher stone left as a guide for future Templars is a recurring theme in many legends. Ultimately, the cryptographic evidence does something remarkable. It shifts the narrative from a simple hole filled with gold to an intellectual duel across centuries. It suggests the creators were not just barriers but designers. They were individuals or a group so confident in their own cleverness that they built a machine to protect their secret and then left a coded manual for its operation, challenging all who came after to prove they were smart enough to deserve what lay hidden below. The real treasure of Oak Island, then, might not be the chest at the bottom of the pit, but the satisfaction of finally understanding the minds who put it there. To truly appreciate the engineering marvel that is the money pit, we must step back in time and view it not through our modern lens, but through the technological capabilities of the eras in which it was likely built. This isn't just about guessing a date, it's a process of reverse engineering history itself. By examining what was possible and when, we can start to narrow down the list of suspects to those who actually had the means to pull off such an ambitious project. The carbon dating of the original wood points us toward the mid-1700s, but let's explore the broader technological landscape from the late 1600s through the 18th century to see who fits the profile. Consider first the sheer mechanics of the dig. The main shaft is believed to extend over 100 feet deep. In an era before mechanical excavators, this was a monumental task achieved with basic tools, picks, shovels, and buckets. The real sophistication, however, lies in the pit's integrity. The builders installed wooden platforms at precise 10-foot intervals, not just as markers, but as crucial structural supports to prevent the unstable, waterlogged soil from collapsing in on itself. This technique of timbering a shaft wasn't unknown. It was a standard practice in European deep mining operations for centuries and was also used extensively in military siege warfare for digging tunnels under enemy fortifications. This immediately tells us the creators were not amateurs. They were individuals or a group with direct experience in large-scale excavation, likely drawn from mining or military engineering. They understood soil mechanics and the immense pressure exerted by deep earth, knowledge that was practical and hands-on, not theoretical. Now, let's turn to the piece de resistance, the flood tunnel system. This is where the money pit separates itself from a simple hole in the ground and enters the realm of hydraulic genius. The builders didn't just accidentally tunnel into the water table. They deliberately engineered a conduit hundreds of feet long from the pit to the ocean, specifically designed to flood the shaft upon intrusion. This required a profound understanding of hydrology and tidal patterns. They knew that the water level in the bay fluctuates with the tides, and they calculated the precise gradient needed for the tunnel to function as a natural siphon. The artificial beach at Smith's Cove is the masterstroke that confirms this was all intentional. Constructing a massive, layered filter of eel grass, coconut fiber, and sand to prevent their own drainage system from clogging with silt is a concept that demonstrates foresight and a sophisticated grasp of hydrodynamics. This level of hydrological engineering was absolutely within the reach of the leading military minds of the 18th century. French and British military engineers were masters of controlling water. They built complex moats, canals, and flooding mechanisms for fortresses all across Europe and the New World. For them, turning a beach into a water pump was not magic, it was applied science. This analysis of their capabilities effectively rules out certain popular theories. The classic pirate narrative, for all its romance, struggles under this technical scrutiny. While a pirate captain like Blackbeard commanded men and ships, there's no evidence he or his ilk possessed the specialized knowledge to design and execute such a precise hydraulic system. Their expertise was in navigation, combat, and quick hit-and-run tactics, not in long-term, complex civil engineering projects requiring a disciplined workforce. Similarly, while the Knights Templar were formidable organizationally, the technology required for the money pit's flood tunnels, if we accept the carbon dating, would have been anachronistic for the early 14th century when they allegedly fled Europe. The engineering principles on display are distinctly those of the early modern period, reflecting the systematized knowledge that emerged from the Renaissance and Enlightenment eras. So, who does this historical context point toward? It vividly points to organized, well-funded entities that employed the finest engineers of the age. This brings the British Army's Royal Engineers and the French ingenieurs du Roy from Louisbourg sharply into focus. These men were not just soldiers, they were the tech giants of their day, trained in mathematics, geometry, fortification, and mechanics. They published detailed manuals on siegecraft that included instructions for building countermines and using water as a defensive weapon. For them, the money pit would have been a challenging but logical application of their standard skill set. Furthermore, the scope of the project suggests access to a significant labor force, either soldiers, enslaved people, or paid workers, which again aligns with state-sponsored powers rather than freelance bands of pirates or secret societies operating entirely in the shadows. The technology itself becomes a kind of signature, telling us that the creators were not hiding from a lack of knowledge, but were rather deploying the most advanced engineering of their time to create a secret that was meant to last forever. Now, let's pull back the curtain on the masterpiece of this entire endeavor, the flood tunnel system itself. To call it a booby trap is almost an insult. It was a brilliantly conceived, hydraulically powered security system, a permanent sentinel designed to activate only when an intruder came too close. The sheer sophistication of its construction reveals a mind that didn't just understand engineering, it understood the very nature of water, pressure, and human persistence. The system's genius begins not in the dark depths of the pit, but on the sunny shores of Smith's Cove, over 500 feet away. Here, the creators constructed what appeared to be a natural beach, but it was in fact a massive man-made filtration plant. They began by laying a foundation of carefully placed rocks and logs to create a stable base. On top of this, they arranged a thick layer of a material utterly foreign to Nova Scotia, coconut fiber known as esparto grass. This fibrous material, likely imported from the Caribbean or the coasts of Spain and North Africa, was chosen for its incredible ability to act as a natural sieve. On top of the fiber, they placed a final layer of sand and gravel, perfectly mimicking the appearance of a natural beach. This entire artificial structure served one critical purpose: to allow seawater to percolate through it slowly while filtering out silt and sediment that would otherwise clog the delicate system further inland. It was a self-cleaning intake valve built to last for centuries. From this artificial beach, a network of precisely engineered box drains, constructed from carefully fitted stones, funneled the filtered water. These drains acted like arteries, merging into a main channel that sloped gradually downward. This is where the creators demonstrated their masterful understanding of hydrology and gravity. They calculated the exact gradient needed for this channel, which would become the infamous flood tunnel, to run from the beach underneath the island's forest and directly into the bowels of the money pit. They weren't just digging a ditch, they were creating a water highway with a consistent, gentle decline that ensured a constant, reliable flow from the ocean to the target. The tunnel itself, believed to be about 500 feet long, was a marvel of excavation. Working by hand, they would have had to dig a narrow, shored-up passage deep enough to maintain its downhill slope, all while navigating the island's unstable, waterlogged soil. The tunnel likely terminated not at the very bottom of the main shaft, but at a point high enough that it wouldn't flood the pit immediately. Its entrance into the shaft was probably concealed behind one of the oak platforms or a false wall. The entire system was a sleeping giant, a hydrological landmine. The principle was one of differential pressure. As treasure hunters dug deeper, they reduced the Earth's weight and resistance, holding back the seawater in the tunnel. Once they passed a certain critical depth, the immense pressure from the ocean driven by the tides would overcome the final barrier. The result was not a trickle, but a catastrophic, violent influx of seawater that would fill the shaft in a matter of hours, foiling the attempt and making further digging impossibly dangerous. This system tells us three profound things about its creators. First, they possessed advanced, practical knowledge of hydraulic engineering that was on par with the best military engineers of the 18th century. They weren't theorists, they were applied scientists who knew how to harness natural forces like tides and water pressure as weapons. Second, their commitment was absolute. Importing specialized materials like coconut fiber and undertaking a public works project of this scale on a remote island shows immense resources and a long-term vision. This wasn't a panic job, it was a calculated, well-funded operation. Finally, and most chillingly, it reveals their mindset. A pirate might dig a hole and hope no one finds it. A true strategist builds a vault that dares people to find it, confident that even if they do, they will never, ever be able to break in. The flood tunnel wasn't just a trap, it was a statement of supreme confidence from architects who believed they had outsmarted the future. Over the decades, the soil of Oak Island has reluctantly yielded a strange and fragmented collection of objects, each one a potential clue in this centuries-long detective story. These artifacts are the physical fingerprints of the creators, and while they often raise more questions than they answer, they provide our most tangible links to the truth. Let's examine some of the most compelling finds and what they might tell us about who was here and why. The discovery of non-native materials is perhaps the most concrete evidence of outside influence. The coconut fiber, or esparto grass, found deep within the flood tunnels is a perfect example. This material does not grow anywhere near the cold waters of Nova Scotia. Its origins lie in the tropical climates of the Caribbean, the coasts of Spain, or even West Africa. For it to appear in such quantity on Oak Island, it had to have been imported deliberately, likely as ballast in a sailing ship that was then unloaded for this specific purpose. This single piece of evidence powerfully connects the island's mystery to the maritime trade routes of the 17th or 18th centuries, immediately implicating parties with access to transatlantic shipping. Similarly, the handmade wooden dowels and the meticulously shaped wooden structures within the pit point to a workforce with skilled carpentry, likely from a European shipbuilding or military tradition. Then there are the coins. A scattered handful of old coins have been discovered across the island, and while none constitute a treasure hoard, each is a tiny historical marker. The finding of a 17th century Spanish copper Moravdi coin is particularly evocative. This small, low-value coin was the loose change of the Spanish Empire, exactly the type of item that might fall from the pocket of a sailor or soldier. Its presence doesn't prove a Spanish treasure vault, but it does firmly place Spanish-speaking individuals on Oak Island during the era when the pit was most likely constructed. Other coin finds, including a British halfpenny from the 1790s, help to chart the timeline of subsequent exploration rather than the original build, showing that the island attracted attention long before it became a global phenomenon. Perhaps the most haunting and enigmatic artifacts are the fragments of parchment and the mysterious bits of metal. The story of the 3 links of gold chain, brought up by a drill bit in the 1890s, has passed into legend, though its existence is unverified. More concrete, however, is the tantalizing discovery of a tiny shred of parchment brought up from the depths by a drill core. The presence of parchment animal skin prepared for writing is a game changer. It shifts the narrative away from a purely monetary treasure. Why go to such incredible lengths to protect a piece of paper? This artifact is a strong pillar for theories that involve sacred documents, legal papers, or a vast library of knowledge, as proposed in the Francis Bacon and Knights Templar theories. It suggests the creators were preserving information, not just wealth. Other metal objects tell a story of industry and effort. The discovery of an ancient wrought iron scissors-style nail points to early colonial-era activity, as this nail type was common before the mass production of cut nails in the 19th century. A mysterious hand-forged spearhead found in the swamp could be a tool from the original construction or a relic from a much earlier indigenous presence. Even the much-debated lead cross, allegedly found in the island's waters and dated through metal analysis to before the 15th century, has been presented as potential evidence of pre-Columbian European visitors, though its provenance remains hotly contested. When we compile these artifacts, a blurred but fascinating picture begins to develop. We see evidence of a skilled, organized workforce using imported materials and European tools. The timeline suggested by the coins and wood dating points squarely to the mid-1800s. The nature of the items, a low-value Spanish coin, coconut fiber, parchment, and handmade nails, paints a portrait of a practical, large-scale operation, not a frantic, secretive burial. This was a project with supply lines and a clear objective. The artifacts collectively argue against a pirate's hurried cash and instead point toward a state-sponsored or well-funded private enterprise with old-world resources and new-world ambitions. They are the silent, scattered witnesses to a scheme of breathtaking ambition whose full purpose remains just out of reach, encrypted not in symbols but in the very earth of the island itself. But the true testament to their genius lies not in the main shaft, but in what was discovered 500 feet away on the shoreline of Smith's Cove. It was here that searchers, battling the relentless tides, slowly uncovered what initially seemed to be a natural beach. But as they dug deeper, they realized they were not uncovering nature's work. They were reverse engineering a masterpiece of maritime deception. This was no beach at all. It was a brilliantly designed artificial filtration system, a sophisticated water pump disguised as a slice of the coastline. The entire cove had been transformed into the engine room for the money pit's legendary defense mechanism. The centerpiece of this hidden engine was an intricate network known as the box drains. Imagine a series of precisely constructed channels, each built from flat stones carefully fitted together to form a perfect rectangular conduit. These weren't crude ditches, they were engineered waterways, meticulously crafted to control the flow of seawater with unwavering precision. These individual drains, discovered by early treasure hunters, fanned out across the cove like the fingers of a hand, each one designed to gather water efficiently. They all converged into a single, larger main drain, a subterranean aqueduct that acted as a grand highway, channeling all that collected water on its long, deliberate journey beneath the forest and directly toward the heart of the money pit. The gradient of this tunnel was not left to chance. It was calculated with a hydrologist's care, ensuring a constant, powerful flow that could be unleashed the moment the pit's final defenses were breached. Beneath this stone network lay the system's most ingenious component, a massive man-made filter. The creators began by laying a foundation of bound brushwood, creating a stable base that would resist shifting in the tidal mud. On top of this, they placed a truly baffling material, a thick, compact layer of coconut fiber known as esparto grass. This substance is utterly foreign to the cold climate of Nova Scotia, meaning it had to have been imported by ship, likely from the Caribbean or the coasts of Spain and Africa. This fiber was chosen for its remarkable natural property as a sieve. Above this, they completed the illusion with a final layer of beach sand and gravel. The entire structure functioned as a massive, self-cleaning intake valve. Seawater could percolate down through the sand, through the coconut fiber which trapped clogging silt and sediment, and into the waiting box drains below, ensuring that only clean water entered the system to feed the flood tunnels. This attention to maintenance, designed to function for centuries without human intervention, reveals a mindset focused on permanence. This level of complex, large-scale maritime engineering is perhaps the most powerful clue we have for identifying the creators. It decisively shifts the narrative away from rogue pirates or small secret societies. The skills on display, advanced hydrology, precise stonework, large-scale earth-moving, and an understanding of tidal mechanics are the hallmark of experienced military engineers. This perfectly aligns with the capabilities of the French engineers du Roi stationed at the fortress of Louisbourg or the British Royal Engineers. These were men trained in the science of siegecraft, which included building countermines and using controlled flooding as a weapon. Constructing a complex water-based defense system was literally part of their standard training manual. The sheer volume of labor required to strip a cove bare and rebuild it as a machine also points to a large, disciplined workforce, the kind only a military or state-sponsored entity could command. The Smith's Cove discovery doesn't just tell us how the money pit was protected, it shouts to us who was capable of such an astonishing feat. Yet for all the brilliance of the engineering and the intrigue of the artifacts, the most chilling and humanizing discoveries on Oak Island have not been made of wood or stone, but of bone. Deep within the muddy soil and the flooded chambers, searchers have unearthed a far more personal and grim relic of the pit's construction: human remains. These fragments of the past tell a story not of treasure, but of toil, sacrifice, and potentially of a dark secret that someone was willing to kill to protect. The most significant findings came from an area known as Smith's Cove, the very site of the ingenious artificial beach. Here, treasure hunters excavating the drainage system made a gruesome discovery: fragments of human bone. But these weren't just scattered remains. Forensic analysis revealed a particularly grim detail. The bones showed signs of having been cremated. This was not a simple burial or an accidental death. The presence of cremated bone points to a deliberate act, a methodical disposal of a body. This changes the narrative from a possible worksite accident to something far more sinister. It suggests that the individual may have been killed, perhaps as a security measure to protect the project's secrecy, and then their remains were burned to eliminate any evidence. This single macabre detail paints a picture of the pit's creators not just as brilliant engineers, but as ruthless pragmatists for whom the ultimate goal justified the most extreme measures. Further analysis of these and other bone fragments found across the island has provided clues to the origins of these individuals. Through advanced anthropological and DNA testing, researchers have determined that some of the remains are of European descent, dating roughly to the same period as the pit's construction in the mid-1700s. This finding is a powerful piece of evidence, directly linking the physical labor on the island to people from the Old World. It strongly supports the theories involving European powers like the French or British, who would have had European soldiers, engineers, or laborers in their employ. However, the story is not that simple. Other bone fragments have been identified as potentially having indigenous North American origins. This opens up a profoundly darker chapter in the island's story, suggesting that the massive workforce required for such a daunting project may have included enslaved or coerced local Micmac people, or that the site held significance that led to conflict. The presence of these remains forces us to confront the human cost of the money pit. Digging a shaft over 100 feet deep by hand, constructing tunnels that stretched for hundreds of feet, and building an entire artificial beach was brutally dangerous work. Accidents would have been commonplace. A tunnel collapse could have buried men alive. A misstep in the flooding system could have led to drowning. The work was done with primitive tools under relentless pressure, a combination that undoubtedly led to injury and death. The bones silently testify to the immense physical sacrifice this project demanded, but the cremated remains suggest that not all deaths were accidental. They hint at a climate of fear and absolute secrecy, where a worker who learned too much or posed a threat to the operation might have been eliminated to ensure the secret died with him. These fragments of bone are the ultimate paradox of Oak Island. They are the most human elements of the mystery, yet they point to the most inhuman acts, revealing that the true price of the treasure was not paid in gold but in blood. When we consider the sheer scale of the Oak Island project, the question of cost becomes not just relevant but absolutely central to identifying its creators. This was not a weekend digging project. It was an industrial-scale operation that would have required a staggering financial investment, the kind of funding that eliminates most theoretical suspects immediately. Let's break down the immense expenses involved, because the money trail is one of the most compelling clues we have. First, and most significantly, was the labor. The excavation of a shaft over 100 feet deep, the construction of a 500-foot-long flood tunnel, and the massive earthworks at Smith's Cove would have demanded a huge workforce. We're not talking about a handful of men. This project likely required dozens, if not over 100, skilled and unskilled laborers working for months, perhaps even more than a year. These men needed to be fed, housed, clothed, and paid. In the mid-1800s, this was an enormous ongoing expense. Furthermore, this was dangerous work. The risk of tunnel collapses, flooding accidents, and other fatalities was high, which would have necessitated either hazard pay or compensation for families, adding another layer of financial liability for whoever was footing the bill. Next, we have the materials. While some timber could be sourced locally, many of the materials were exotic and expensive imports. The vast quantities of coconut fiber found in the filtration system at Smith's Cove had to be shipped across the Atlantic, likely from the Caribbean or the Mediterranean. This wasn't a light cargo. It was bulk material used as ballast, meaning an entire ship's worth of this specialized substance was likely procured and transported at great cost. The precisely cut flagstones found at the surface, the shaped lumber for the platforms, and the materials for tools, all of this represents a significant supply chain that had to be established and maintained on a remote island, a logistical nightmare that only deep pockets could solve. Finally, the most priceless resource, expertise. The individual or individuals who designed this system were not common laborers. They were brilliant hydraulic engineers, master surveyors, and skilled military strategists. In the 18th century, such knowledge was a rare and expensive commodity. Hiring a team of Royal Engineers or French ingénieurs du Roi for a clandestine, off-the-books project would have commanded a premium price, far beyond the means of any common pirate captain or small secret society. This was the project management and architectural talent of the era, and it did not come cheap. When we added all up, the massive payroll, the expensive imported materials, the specialized tools, and the elite engineering talent, we are looking at a project that would have cost a fortune, equivalent to millions of dollars in today's money. This financial reality immediately narrows our list of plausible suspects. A pirate like Blackbeard or Captain Kidd, while potentially wealthy from plunder, operated on a different economic model. Pirate wealth was notoriously fluid, quickly divided among the crew and spent in port. The idea of a pirate captain investing such a vast sum in a long-term, labor-intensive construction project with no guaranteed short-term return is completely at odds with the pirate mentality and their entire financial structure. They were opportunists, not infrastructure developers. Similarly, a small philosophical society like the Rosicrucians, or even a larger fraternal order like the Freemasons in their early days, simply would not have had the centralized treasury for such an undertaking. While individual Masons might have been wealthy, the organization itself was not a monolithic financial entity capable of bankrolling a massive secret construction project without leaving some trace in its records. So who does that leave? The only entities with the necessary combination of vast wealth, access to skilled engineers, and a disciplined workforce were state powers or massive, state-sponsored commercial enterprises. The British military, with the full resources of the Crown behind it, certainly had the treasury and the manpower. The French military, particularly the garrison at the wealthy fortress of Louisbourg, also had the funds, the engineers, and a powerful motive to protect their wealth from British capture. Finally, a massive joint stock company like the British East India Company or the Hudson's Bay Company possessed the capital, the ships, and the organizational structure to attempt such a venture, perhaps to create a secret repository for goods or bullion outside the reach of governments or competitors. The financial footprint of the money pit is perhaps the most convincing argument that its creation was an official, or at least an officially sanctioned, act. It was a capital project, and only the deepest pockets in the world could have afforded it. While the Oak Island money pit stands as a singular enigma, it is far from the only ancient puzzle that has captivated and confounded humanity. Looking at similar sites around the world reveals a fascinating pattern, a recurring human obsession with protecting something of immense value through staggering themes of engineering and misdirection. These global parallels offer us a new lens through which to view the Oak Island mystery, suggesting that its creators were part of a long and sophisticated tradition of architectural secrecy. Consider the tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs, the ancient world's most famous treasure vaults. The Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed over 4,500 years ago, is a masterclass in defensive architecture. Its builders filled ascending corridors with massive granite plugs, created dead-end passages, and hid the true burial chamber deep within millions of tons of stone. Like the money pit's flood tunnels, these were not simple barriers. They were complex systems designed to actively thwart intruders. The key difference, of course, is scale and motive. The Egyptians sought to protect a pharaoh's journey to the afterlife, their work illuminated by religious fervor and the unlimited resources of a state religion. If the Oak Island builders were inspired by such ancient principles, it points to a motive that was equally profound, perhaps spiritual or ideological, rather than merely financial. It suggests the creators saw themselves as guardians of something they believed was sacred. Moving forward in time, we find stunning parallels in medieval Europe. The story of King John of England, who lost his crown jewels in the wash of a rising tide in 1216, shows that the concept of using water as a natural guardian was already understood centuries before Oak Island. More directly, the massive underground tunnels and chambers beneath castles like the Château de Gizes in France speak to a medieval obsession with hidden spaces. Knights Templar legends are rife with tales of secret vaults, and while often speculative, these stories demonstrate how the idea of ingeniously concealed treasure was woven into the cultural fabric of the era. The precision stonework and geometric layouts of some Templar sites bear a stylistic resemblance to the described structures on Oak Island. This doesn't necessarily prove Templar involvement, but it does show that the necessary knowledge for such construction, stone masonry, surveying, and basic hydraulics existed within certain European traditions, waiting to be deployed across the ocean. Perhaps the most compelling technological comparison comes from the other side of the world, in the jungles of Central America. The ancient Maya were masters of water management, constructing elaborate underground reservoirs called choltons and intricate canal systems to survive dry seasons. Their understanding of hydrology was advanced and practical. While not designed as traps, these systems prove that complex underground waterworks were being engineered independently by different cultures. This is crucial because it decouples the idea of hydraulic genius from a single European source. It makes the Oak Island flood tunnels feel less like an anomalous miracle and more like the application of known principles that could have been learned by any group with exposure to global engineering practices, be they European military engineers who studied ancient texts or sailors who had seen Maya or Inca innovations firsthand. Even the cryptic markings on Oak Island find echoes elsewhere. The Nazca lines in Peru are a vast canvas of geoglyphs, giant figures etched into the desert floor, seemingly meant to be seen from the heavens. While their purpose remains debated, they represent a desire to communicate on a monumental scale, to leave a permanent mark that conveys meaning to those who can understand it. The stone markers and potential geometric alignments on Oak Island could be a smaller, more clandestine version of this same impulse, a message not for the gods but for initiated humans. Similarly, the elaborate curse inscriptions on Egyptian tomb walls served as both supernatural warnings and practical psychological deterrents. The 90-foot stone with its cipher could be seen as a New World equivalent, a secular curse designed to intimidate or challenge through intellect rather than superstition. Examining these global sites does not give us a definitive answer for Oak Island, but it dramatically reframes the question. It moves us away from asking, could this have been built? To a much more revealing question, who had the cultural blueprint for this type of construction? The money pit is no longer an isolated oddity, but appears as a node in a worldwide web of architectural secrecy. Its builders were likely steeped in a tradition that understood the power of earth and water as guardians, that valued symbolic communication, and that was willing to invest staggering resources to protect something deemed irreplaceable. Whether that something was gold, knowledge, or a sacred relic, the global evidence suggests they were following a very old, very human playbook, written in stone and soil across the centuries. They didn't just build on Oak Island, they became one with it, weaving their traps so seamlessly into the landscape that the very environment became their most loyal and silent guardian. The creators' true genius wasn't just in the structures they erected, but in their profound, almost intuitive understanding of the island's natural rhythms and geological personality. They weren't fighting against nature, they were recruiting it, turning tides, soil, and stone into active components of their grand design. The most breathtaking example of this is their masterful exploitation of the ocean's heartbeat, the tides. Mahone Bay experiences a significant tidal range, with water levels rising and falling dramatically twice each day. A lesser mind might have seen this as an obstacle, but the pit's architects saw it as a perpetual, inexhaustible power source. They designed their infamous flood tunnels to function as a natural siphon, a system that leveraged this constant ebb and flow. The tunnel from Smith's Cove was engineered with a specific, gentle gradient. At low tide, the system was relatively dormant, but as the tide surged in, the rising water pressure in the bay would force seawater into the tunnel's intake. This created a powerful, pressurized flow that traveled the 500-foot length toward the money pit shaft. The system was ingeniously calibrated so that the weight of the earth and the water pressure reached a precarious equilibrium. The moment treasure hunters dug past a certain depth, they unknowingly removed that final counterweight. The immense pent-up pressure from the ocean would then explode into the shaft with catastrophic force, a perfectly timed ambush orchestrated by the moon and the sea themselves. This wasn't a simple booby trap, it was a hydrological machine powered by planetary forces, designed to reset itself every 12 hours forever. Their environmental savvy extended far beyond the water's edge and deep into the very soil under their feet. The geology of Oak Island is a complex mix of glacial till, limestone, and waterlogged clay, notoriously unstable ground for deep excavation. The creators demonstrated a working knowledge of these soil mechanics that was centuries ahead of its time. They understood that digging a deep, straight shaft in such material would be a death sentence. The walls would inevitably collapse long before they reached their goal. Their solution was the series of meticulously placed oak platforms at regular 10-foot intervals. These weren't just measurement markers or convenient shelves, they were critical structural reinforcements. Each platform acted as a massive brace, distributing the immense lateral pressure from the surrounding soil and preventing a catastrophic cave-in. This technique of timbering a shaft is a direct precursor to modern construction methods used in tunneling and mining today. It reveals a pragmatic, hands-on understanding of geotechnical engineering that could only have been born from extensive experience in large-scale digging projects, likely in similar challenging conditions. Even the island's most unassuming features were co-opted into the scheme. The choice of Smith's Cove as the water source was a stroke of topographical genius. Its natural, sheltered shape and sandy composition provided the perfect canvas for their artificial beach. They didn't have to construct a massive seawall or breakwater. The cove's natural geography did most of the work for them, calming the waves and providing a stable foundation. Furthermore, the underlying bedrock topography likely played a hidden role. The flood tunnel had to maintain its precise downhill slope for hundreds of feet without hitting an impenetrable layer of rock that would have blocked its path. This suggests the creators may have conducted preliminary surveys or probes to map the subsurface geology, ensuring their chosen path was clear. They were thinking in 3 dimensions, considering not just the surface, but the entire volume of the island from the bedrock below to the tides above. This holistic approach to environmental engineering transforms our image of the creators from mere builders into true Renaissance minds, who saw the entire island not as a location, but as a complex set of interlocking tools waiting to be assembled into the ultimate vault. While the physical digs and dramatic discoveries capture our imagination, the true hunt for the money pit's origins often leads researchers into the quiet, dust-filled halls of archives and libraries. Here they scour historical documents, maps, and ship logs, searching for the faintest paper trail that could confirm who was on the island and what they were doing. This meticulous work has turned up a handful of intriguing, though often frustratingly ambiguous, clues that point toward unusual activities long before the teenagers arrived in 1795. One of the most compelling pieces of documentary evidence comes from the early days of the hunt itself. In 1864, a prospector named John Gammill wrote a letter to a treasure hunting company, recounting a conversation he'd had decades earlier with Anthony Vaughan, one of the 3 original discoverers. In this letter, Vaughan allegedly stated that his father, who settled on the nearby mainland in the 1760s, had known about the strange clearing and the old oak tree with the block and tackle long before 1795. He claimed the site was considered an old pirate's work site even then, a local legend passed down through the community. If true, this pushes the date of the original construction back by at least 30 years, placing it squarely in the mid-18th century, a period of intense conflict between the French and British empires in the region. Another tantalizing rumor, though one lacking concrete documentation, involves a mysterious map. The story goes that in the 1930s, Gilbert Hedden, a prominent searcher, was studying a map of the island when he was struck by its resemblance to a map allegedly drawn by the infamous pirate Captain Kidd. This purported Kidd map was said to feature strange symbols and a particular island formation that seemed to match Oak Island. While the authenticity of such a pirate map is highly dubious and firmly in the realm of legend, it fueled the imaginations of many early hunters and added to the pirate lore. More credible are the British Admiralty charts from the mid-1800s. These navigational maps note the presence of money pits on several islands in Mahone Bay, suggesting that either the Oak Island story was already well known or that similar, though less famous, excavations existed in the area, hinting at a broader pattern of activity. Perhaps the most significant historical record is also the most perplexing, the complete absence of one. If the British or French military were behind the money pit as a secure paymaster's vault or a hidden treasury, one would expect to find some mention of it in their extensive and meticulous military logs and financial records. The British Army, in particular, was a bureaucracy that documented everything from the cost of a single nail to the movement of every company. The fact that no expense reports, no work orders, and no correspondence regarding such a massive engineering project on Oak Island has ever been found in the official archives is a powerful argument against direct official military involvement. This silence suggests that if they were involved, it was a clandestine, off-the-books operation run by a rogue officer or unit, its secrets never making it into the official record. Conversely, researchers have uncovered records of other, verified engineering projects from the era that demonstrate the necessary skills were present in the region. The detailed construction logs of the fortress of Louisbourg, for instance, reveal the French military's profound expertise in large-scale earthworks and hydraulics. British records from the founding of Halifax in 1749 show they were capable of rapid, large-scale construction with disciplined labor. While these documents don't mention Oak Island by name, they provide crucial context, proving that the technical knowledge required to build the money pit existed locally among the military engineers of both warring empires. The absence of a direct record for Oak Island itself, rather than disproving their involvement, might instead point to the project's ultimate fate, a secret that was too well kept, its architects succumbing to war or misfortune before they could ever file a report, leaving their magnificent machine to silently guard its mystery for centuries. For all the romantic allure of buried pirate gold, some of the most popular theories surrounding Oak Island simply cannot withstand the scrutiny of historical records and practical logistics. The image of a swashbuckling captain like Blackbeard orchestrating such a complex project is compelling, but it quickly unravels when we examine the facts. These legendary pirates were brilliant seafarers and fearsome fighters, but their operations were built on speed, mobility, and the immediate division of plunder. The idea that they would invest months or even years of back-breaking labor with a large crew to construct a permanent, engineered vault contradicts their entire modus operandi. A pirate's life was unpredictable and often short. They sought quick riches to spend in port, not long-term capital projects requiring geological surveys and advanced hydrology. Furthermore, the documented timelines of these infamous figures rarely, if ever, place them in the waters around Nova Scotia for the extended period such a construction would demand. The theory involving Captain William Kidd faces an even more direct historical obstacle. Kidd was executed in 1701, yet carbon dating of the original oak timber from the money pit consistently points to the wood being felled in the mid-1700s. This half-century gap is a chasm that cannot be crossed, placing the pit's construction firmly in an era when the golden age of piracy had long since faded into legend. While Kidd did allegedly speak of a hidden treasure, there is no evidence from his trial or personal papers that he possessed the engineering knowledge or the stable, disciplined workforce necessary for such an undertaking. The technology displayed in the flood tunnels and the artificial beach represents applied military science from a later period, not the pragmatic, rough and ready skills of a pirate crew. Another theory that has captured public imagination but falters under examination is the idea of a rogue Spanish galleon salvaging its treasure. While it is true that Spanish ships did wreck in the region, the bureaucracy of the Spanish Empire was notoriously meticulous. Every ounce of gold and silver shipped from the Americas was meticulously accounted for in detailed manifests. The loss of a treasure galleon would have been a major financial catastrophe, triggering immediate and well-documented salvage attempts. The complete absence of any Spanish records referring to a recovery operation on Oak Island is a powerful argument against their involvement. If a Spanish crew had successfully salvaged a king's ransom, it defies belief that the Crown would not have mounted every possible effort to retrieve it, making its disappearance from all official logs highly suspect. The notion that the island's first inhabitants, the Micmac people, constructed the works is a theory that rightly acknowledges their deep connection to the land but struggles to align with the physical evidence. The Micmac were skilled hunters, fishers, and traders, but their archaeological record shows no evidence of deep shaft mining or large-scale stonework of this nature. The materials found within the pit, the ship's pulley, the wrought iron scissors nail, and the imported coconut fiber are all post-contact artifacts pointing squarely to European technology and trade networks. While the Micmac undoubtedly used the island for seasonal resources, the engineering principles behind the money pit are from an entirely different cultural and technological tradition, one that arrived on their shores from across the Atlantic. Dismissing these theories is not about diminishing their narrative appeal, but about honoring the facts that guide us toward more plausible answers, steering our search away from dead ends forged in legend and toward the tangible clues left behind by the true architects. For centuries, the hunt on Oak Island relied on picks, shovels, and gut feelings, a pursuit shrouded in equal parts hope and mud. But in recent decades, a quiet revolution has taken place, one that has introduced a new kind of treasure hunter to the island, the scientist. Armed with ground-penetrating radar, mass spectrometers, and DNA sequencers, this modern approach has begun to strip away layers of legend, replacing speculation with hard, albeit complex, data. This isn't about finding a chest of gold. It's about forensically reconstructing a crime scene that is over 200 years old, and the evidence is finally starting to speak. One of the most powerful tools brought to bear is ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. This technology allows researchers to see into the Earth without ever turning a shovel, sending radar pulses deep underground and mapping the echoes that return. For Oak Island, GPR has been nothing short of transformative. It has revealed that the money pit is not an isolated anomaly. The entire island is crisscrossed with a labyrinth of unnatural voids, tunnels, and what appear to be man-made chambers, all hidden from view. These scans have confirmed the existence of the long-theorized flood tunnel system, tracing its path from Smith's Cove toward the money pit with startling clarity. Perhaps more intriguingly, GPR has identified several other promising targets across the island, suggesting the original construction was far more extensive than anyone dreamed. It paints a picture not of a single hole, but of an entire underground complex, a massive undertaking that completely rewrites our understanding of the project's scale and ambition. While GPR shows us the shape of the mystery, carbon dating has begun to tell us its age. This process, which measures the steady decay of radioactive carbon isotopes in organic material, provides a scientific clock. When applied to the original oak timber pulled from the depths of the money pit, the results have been consistently clear. The wood was cut and shaped in the mid-1700s, most likely between 1650 and 1750. This single piece of data is a wrecking ball to many popular theories. It definitively rules out Captain Kidd and the golden age of piracy as they were active decades earlier. It also creates a significant challenge for the Knights Templar theory, as their great exile was in the early 1300s. The carbon dating firmly plants the construction of the money pit in the colonial era, a time of fierce imperial rivalry between the French and British in North America. This doesn't just suggest who might have built it, it tells us with scientific certainty when the first shovels struck the earth. The analysis has even extended to the smallest fragments, thanks to advanced DNA sequencing. The human bones found in the mud of Smith's Cove and elsewhere on the island have undergone rigorous testing. The results indicate a mix of European and Middle Eastern ancestry, a finding that sent shockwaves through the community. While European ancestry fits perfectly with the 18th century timeline and theories of French or British military involvement, the Middle Eastern genetic signature is a profound curveball. It immediately resurrects questions about the Knights Templar, whose order was founded in the Middle East, or other enigmatic travelers from the Mediterranean. This doesn't prove a Templar connection outright, but it introduces a tantalizing biological clue that someone from that part of the world was present on Oak Island, their story ending in its soil. Similarly, the analysis of other materials has yielded astonishing results. The ubiquitous coconut fiber found deep within the flood tunnels has been identified as esparto grass, a species native to the coasts of Spain and North Africa. This confirms its foreign origin and supports the idea of a transatlantic voyage. Even tiny fragments of parchment brought up by a drill core have been tested. Using polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, scientists were able to identify trace amounts of animal DNA on the parchment, confirming it is indeed sheep or goat skin prepared for writing. They also detected the presence of human DNA, likely from the skin cells of the person who handled it centuries ago, and even more remarkably, traces of iron gall ink. This proves beyond any doubt that a written document of some kind was lowered into the depths. This elevates the mystery from a hunt for precious metals to a potential quest for lost information, a deed, a map, or a religious text that someone considered valuable enough to protect with an engineering marvel. This fusion of old-fashioned digging with 21st century science hasn't always provided easy answers. In many ways, it has deepened the mystery by adding new, conflicting layers of evidence. The carbon dating points to the 1700s, yet the Middle Eastern DNA hints at a much older narrative. The military-style engineering suggests state power, while the cryptic symbols whisper of secret societies. What technology has ultimately revealed is that the story of Oak Island is not a simple tale with a single villain or hero. It is a palimpsest, a complex overlay of different events, periods, and groups. The scientific data acts as a filter, helping us separate fact from folklore and giving us, for the first time, a genuine chance to listen to the whispers of the past. The truth is no longer buried quite as deep as it used to be. What does a trap built to outsmart the future tell us about the minds of its architects? The Oak Island money pit is more than an engineering marvel. It is a psychological portrait, a window into the deepest motivations and fears of those who conceived it. This wasn't a project born from a simple desire to hide wealth. The sheer complexity, the layered redundancy of its defenses, and the painstaking effort to ensure its permanence point to a mindset far more complex than greed. We are looking at a blend of paranoia, genius, obsession, and a philosophical conviction so powerful it demanded a legacy carved not in stone, but in the very fabric of the island itself. First, consider the profound paranoia, or perhaps the pragmatic and justified fear, that the design implies. This is not the irrational fear of a delusional mind, but the calculated caution of someone who understood the value of what they possessed and the lengths to which others would go to take it. They didn't just worry about a casual explorer, they anticipated a determined, organized assault. The flood tunnels are a defense mechanism designed for a worst-case scenario, a guarantee that even if the location was discovered by a powerful enemy with unlimited resources, the treasure would remain secure. This suggests the creators believed they had adversaries capable of mounting a prolonged excavation campaign. Were they hiding from a rival state like the British Crown or the French monarchy? Were they protecting something from an institution like the Church, which might see their secret as heresy? The system doesn't just say, "Keep out," it says, "I know you will come for me and I have ensured you will fail." Yet, intertwined with this paranoia is a breathtaking, almost arrogant brilliance. This is not the work of frightened people digging a hole in a panic. It is the work of master strategists who are supremely confident in their own intellectual superiority. They were playing a long game, thinking in terms of centuries, not years. The artificial beach at Smith's Cove is a testament to this. It shows they weren't just thinking about stopping people, they were thinking about maintaining their machine. By filtering out sediment, they engineered a system that would function autonomously for generations without maintenance. This reveals a mind that could model complex hydrological systems, predict geological shifts, and foresee the challenges of long-term preservation. There is a cool, calculating intelligence here, a personality type that derives deep satisfaction from solving a multi-layered problem with an elegant, devastatingly effective solution. They weren't just building a vault, they were composing a symphony of earth and water, and they were confident that no one else could ever conduct it. Beneath the paranoia and the brilliance lies a deep, undeniable obsession. The scale of the labor involved digging a shaft over 100 feet deep, and a flood tunnel 500 feet long by hand transcends any rational cost-benefit analysis. This was a project that consumed lives, fortunes, and countless hours of back-breaking work. Obsession is the only engine powerful enough to drive such an undertaking. This could have been the obsession of a true believer, someone safeguarding a religious relic they believed held world-altering power, a sacred duty that justified any sacrifice. Or it could have been the obsession of an artist or philosopher like a Francis Bacon, who was so convinced of the importance of preserving knowledge for a future age that he would dedicate vast resources to building a time capsule. This level of obsession suggests the creators were not merely hired hands, they were true believers in their cause, whether that cause was wealth, faith, or knowledge. The pit itself is a physical manifestation of a fixed idea, an idea fix made real in timber and stone. Finally, the design hints at a specific philosophical or religious worldview. The use of precise measurements, geometric markers, and potential celestial alignments points to a mind steeped in symbolism and the belief that the universe operates on a framework of sacred geometry. This is the hallmark of esoteric traditions like those embraced by the Freemasons or the Rosicrucians. For these groups, the process of building itself was a spiritual act. The journey downward into the earth could be seen as an allegory for spiritual descent and rebirth. The challenges and traps were not just physical barriers but moral and intellectual tests, ensuring that only the worthy, those with the right knowledge, patience, and purity of purpose, could ever reach the ultimate truth at the center. In this light, the money pit is not a trap but a temple. It is a ritual space designed to initiate, to teach, and to guard its secrets from the profane. The creators, therefore, were not just engineers, they were priests of a hidden truth, architects of a mystery that was meant to endure as a testament to their beliefs long after they were gone. Their psychology was not driven by a fear of loss, but by a sacred duty to preserve. So where does this leave us after centuries of digging, drilling, and deciphering? The evidence, when pieced together, points less toward a solitary mastermind and more toward a convergence of capability, motive, and historical circumstance. The most compelling clues all seem to align in the mid-1700s, an era of fierce imperial rivalry in the New World. The carbon-dated timber, the imported coconut fiber from Spanish trade routes, the European origins of the human remains, and the military-grade hydrological engineering all create a powerful circumstantial case. This was not the work of a lone pirate captain or a small band of knights. It was a capital project requiring vast resources, a disciplined workforce, and the kind of sophisticated engineering knowledge possessed by only a few entities at the time. The French military engineers from the fortress of Louisbourg, desperate to protect their treasury from capture, or a clandestine British military operation creating a secure off-books vault, remain the most plausible suspects. They had the means, the motive, and were operating in the right place at the right time. The cryptic symbols and the tantalizing trace of Middle Eastern DNA add a layer of profound intrigue, suggesting the possibility of an even older secret that these later groups may have been building upon or protecting, weaving their own European technology into a mystery that might have deeper, more ancient roots. Yet the enduring power of the Oak Island mystery lies not in a definitive answer, but in the profound questions it forces us to ask about our own nature. This isn't just a story about what might be buried. It's a reflection of our timeless fascination with the unknown, our relentless drive to solve puzzles, and our capacity for both brilliant creation and obsessive pursuit. The Money Pit stands as a monument to human ingenuity, a machine built to defy time itself, a masterpiece of misdirection that has outwitted generations. But it is also a mirror reflecting our own dreams of wealth, our thirst for knowledge, and our willingness to sacrifice everything in the face of an elusive maybe. The 6 lives lost, the millions spent, and the decades of hope invested are not just footnotes. They are the human cost of this obsession, a testament to the powerful grip a single, unsolved riddle can hold on the human spirit. Perhaps the real treasure was never gold or jewels, but the story itself, a continuous narrative of curiosity that stretches from those 3 curious boys in 1795 to the high-tech searchers of today. It's a story that belongs to everyone who has ever looked at a map and wondered what secrets lie in the blank spaces, who has ever felt the thrill of a clue leading to a deeper mystery. The investigation is far from over. Each new season of digging, each new scientific analysis brings us closer to understanding the incredible minds behind this enigma. So what do you think? Who do you believe built the Oak Island Money Pit? Was it a desperate French garrison, a secretive band of Templars, a philosophical circle preserving knowledge, or something beyond our current imagination? Share your theories in the comments below, because the greatest discoveries are often made when we come together, pool our knowledge, and keep the spirit of investigation alive. The pit may still hold its ultimate secret, but the search for it continues to reveal the incredible depth of human imagination.